Hello, bonjour, namaste, ni hao, and ohio, everybody. What is going on? It is Gail here. Welcome back to the YouTube channel once again for another cut contents video for Danmachi Season 5. And today we are going over the cut contents for episodes 12 and 13. Of course, some of the best episodes in Danmachi, but of course, that does not mean that they are excluded from having no cut contents. Unfortunately, that is still a thing, and this is something I have to clarify. When it comes to light novel adaptations, I think it's going to be a given, to be quite honest, to have cut contents. This is something I've seen in other series as well. You talk about Slime, you talk about ReZero, you talk about Mushoku Tensei, you talk about X, Y, or Z light novel adaptation. There will be cut contents. It's all about how you do the cut contents and if it makes the right decision in terms of the anime adaptation. So we're going to go over that. I'm going to talk about whether or not it was the right decision in this video, as I normally do. And of course, I'm going to go into detail about whether or not I would have put it in or how I would have put it in otherwise as well. So of course, if you guys going to enjoy this video, remember to leave a like down below, subscribe to the channel for more content, and let me know in the comment section down below, do you guys like this format? So of course, there's no face cam in this video. I'm just doing this voice only, and in the background you're gonna see, of course, the episodes itself. Of course, you're gonna see the scenes that I'm talking about. So hopefully it'll give you guys the better indication of exactly, you know, what was done and what was done wrong at that moment in time in the episode. So hopefully you guys prefer this style of recording. And one more thing as well, I would like you guys to let me know in the comment section down below. Would you guys like me to do this for upcoming episodes, for one? But also, do you guys want me to do cut contents for older seasons? Actually, once season 5 is done, we won't have any anime for a while. It does seem like maybe we might get an announcement at episode 15 for maybe like a Stray Record, Sword Art Online. Who knows, right? We don't know exactly what's coming up. But in the meantime, do you guys want me to go back in time and maybe do cut contents for season 1? Compare season 1 with volumes 1 to 5, of course, which is what it would adapted. Obviously, season 2 we know is so questionable, and we know there's a lot of problems with it, but maybe you anime onlys don't know exactly why it's a problem, and maybe I can go over that. So let me know in the comments, would you guys like me to go back in time and do those videos as well? I'd truly be interested to see what you guys would want to see on the channel. Now, I think without further ado, let's start off with episode 12. Let's talk about the cut contents from that episode. Now, we're going to start off from the very beginning, because at the very beginning itself, we have a couple of things that are skipped out on. And the main thing that's skipped out on is a lot of things to do with Hayden's betrayal, or indications towards Hayden's betrayal. So at the very beginning, when Freya is talking about, you know, oh, tell Hayden to finish it off quickly, finish the war games off quickly, the anime kind of cuts out the entire dialogue between, you know, Hayden questioning and, you know, subsequently commanding the familiar members to press the attack in response to, of course, Freya's command of finishing the war games quickly. When he says to press the attack, Alan gets the, you know, command as well from a female familiar member, from Hayden, basically saying that, you know, Hayden is saying to press the attack. Alan questions it. Alan's doubting the command a little bit, wondering like what the hell's going on here. Seems a bit odd that, you know, Hayden is saying to press the attack. The female familiar member does tell him that, you know, oh, it's from Lady Freya. Lady Freya made the decision. And so Alan then immediately responds to it saying, okay, you know what, fair enough. But I think there's a reason why this entire scene was cut, and I'll come on to it in just a moment, because it kind of connects to another scene in a way where it kind of questions Hayden's motives a little bit. But in between the two scenes that I'm going to be talking about here and talking about Hayden's motives, there's also another scene that was cut entirely from the anime, and it's yet another scene of the orphanage kids, basically. Because of course, as you've seen in previous cut contents, not only in my channel but previous other channels as well, you know, going over older seasons as well, the orphanage was a great way for Seer and Belle to connect, and that was a place they would visit. And obviously they'd visit these kids that were both you know, appreciative of the fact that Seer and Belle would come and visit them and, you know, play with them and so on and so forth. And that has been entirely cut from this episode. It's something that has been cut from an earlier episode as well, and it's been cut from season 3 and season 2 of the anime, unfortunately, as well. So I can't really blame this episode for not having it, because it's a problem that it has been a thing since the earlier seasons not having it, right? It's become a problem because the earlier seasons haven't had it. So there's no point in having it now, because to all of us, it'll be just some random kids crying, basically, right? Which doesn't make sense, in all honesty. It doesn't make sense. So I'm okay with them skipping out on it. Now, let's talk about the Hayden motives once again and the indications of Hayden's betrayal. So, we obviously had that first scene that was cut, right? Then we have another scene where Lily and Finn are discussing the war games that's been entirely cut. And Finn is going on about how Lily should be using Hayden himself as a way to beat him rather than beating him outright, with strategy and everything. It's impossible. Even Finn says that he'd only beat Hayden 4 out of 10 times, and that's because of his aching thumb, basically. That's the only way he can beat Hayden. So what he tells Lily to do is to beat him using his own motives. And this was the real first indication that Hayden was potentially going to betray the Freya Familia. Now, I think the anime decided to remove both of these scenes not only because of time, but also because it would add more towards the shock factor when it actually happened, because there would have been no indication, there would have been no lead up into it. It would have just happened immediately, right? Because obviously, in the next episode, we see at the start that, Belle thought that Hayden would betray the Freya Familia and Hayden would help Belle and the rest of the Alliance. But initially when, Belle was talking to Lily about that in episode 10, I think it was, we thought it was probably about Ryu or something, potentially, right? We all thought it might have been about Ryu or it might have been about something else entirely. And so in this situation, right, I think it adds more to the shock factor and it adds more to the surprise not having the two scenes, right, of Hayden pressing the attack, you could say, as well as Lily and Finn's discussion about the war games, right? The fact that those two scenes are not in the anime helps to the shock factor and the shock value at the end of the episode. So I will let that slide, and I think it's a good decision overall. In my personal opinion, I think it was a good decision overall to skip out on it. Now, instead of actually talking about cut contents, I actually want to talk about additional content. I wanted this video to be not just cut contents, let's talk about it as altered contents as well, because the episode actually does something that we've never seen before, and it doesn't only take from volume 18 of Danmachi, but also takes from episode Ryu, Familiar Chronicles episode Ryu volume 2, something that's not even out in English yet. It's coming out in April, it's not even out in English yet, and it adds it into the anime. This is something that's never happened before. We've not even seen Sword Oratoria content being added into the anime, which I think is a bit of a blemish, to be quite honest. I think they should be doing that. If you're doing this, then you should be doing obviously Sword Oratoria in the main series as well when you can. If you know you're not going to be adapting Sword Oratoria, you gotta do it in the anime. But I'm glad that they decided to do this because it just adds more context to Ryu's development and how she met Estrella, the level up, her weapon, and so on and so forth. So I think that's something that was very nice and lovely to see in the anime. Just wish it was done in previous seasons as well with other books as well. It would have been truly appreciated. Heck, episode Freya as well would have been perfect for the season. But alas, yeah, it is what it is, as they say. It is what it is. This is the very first time I think it feels like we've got additional content and not cut contents. It's crazy. It's crazy to say the least. It's crazy to say the least. I also have to give a shout out to the production team for adding this random character into the anime. It seems like it's a very random character, but hear me out on this. If you've played Danmachi, you already know who it is, but this guy was actually a part of the Estrella Record events. He was there, he had some dialogue as well and everything. He was a part of the Estrella Record events, so he remembers, the things that happened with like Elise and the rest of the Estrella Familia, as well as of course the likes of Artie, Shakti, and so on and so forth. So again, very random character, but actually very nice touch for them to add him into the anime. For those who have played Danmachi, again, it's one of those things, like it's a sort of Easter egg, which I think is a fantastic addition. In all honesty, they really went out of their way to make episode 12 quite interesting and quite unique in that sense. The other thing that was sort of altered, I would say here, it's not really cut, was Ryu struggling with Elise's magic. It was still something that was fresh to her. She's never really used it in action before properly, right? She trained for a little bit with Australia and then came straight here, which is it was so little time, right? It was so little time. So she definitely struggled with Alise's magic that wasn't really shown in the anime very well, in my opinion. And then also the other thing was that she beat Hegni fairly overtly. And the best way to say it is that it's similar to what was in the LN, but it was also a lot closer in the LN. It was a bit closer, I should say, not a lot closer. It was a bit closer because there was like a page of, it being quite even with maybe Hegni having a slight advantage. But then the next page, it was immediately like, oh, Hegni's struggling a little bit. Hegni's struggling a bit. And then Ryu hits him with how many of my comrades did you defeat before this? How many adventures did you take down using Victim Abyss? And then she goes into the explanation of like stamina consumptions and everything of that sort. And that was all for episode 12. Episode 12 actually didn't have that much cut content, which is quite surprising to say, first and foremost. And number two, goes to show how well they can actually do with cut contents. Like literally, I think overall, if they'd even decided to skip out on the opening, I'm not going to say, let's say they skipped out on the ending. Let's say they only skipped out on the opening, the Lily section or the original Hayden section with Alan and everything could have been added very easily. But I think it makes sense as to why they skipped out on it. So I don't blame them for not even having it or even skipping out on the opening to add it in, because it doesn't ruin the surprise at the end of the episode. So I think that's a huge W in my personal opinion. I think they made the right decision there. Let me know if you guys agree or disagree with that statement. I'm quite curious to see what you guys have to say down below. Do you guys think it was the right decision to cut that content or not? I'm quite curious. Now let's move on to episode 13, because I think episode 13 does have a little bit more cut content, and it's mainly to do again with Hayden's betrayal. And I feel like this is where I would have probably said that they should have added this in. But all right, let's start from the very beginning so that you guys get an idea of what I'm talking about here. So the start itself, from Hayden's betrayal to effectively like taking down Heath and stuff, was pretty much spot on for the most part. Some dialogue missing here and there, but for the most part, very spot on. It's only when Ryu says Hayden Sirlan, first and foremost, that, and obviously Hayden tells her to go to help Bell and, help him take on Otaro, is where things start diverting a little bit. Ryu is actually a lot more suspicious about Hayden helping and questions him, to which he strikes down another Freya familiar that was actually sneaking up on Ryu, and it isn't in the anime. And we don't actually see Ryu questioning it and, actually talking to Hayden quite a bit. And we only see her being surprised in the anime. And that's kind of unfortunate. I feel like there should have been a little bit more when it comes to Ryu's reaction. In my personal opinion, I think it would have made a lot more sense. It would have been a lot better, and it would have added a lot more to the scene as well. Again, this is something where I would have said if we had removed the opening, we could have added this in very easily. We also see Hayden attacking the headquarters of Freya Familia directly in the LN, which I think was cut a little bit in the anime. And we also don't really realize the importance of Hayden's betrayal in the anime, as in the light novel it is described how important he is as the commander of the Freya Familia, for one. And number two, as also the magic and range attacker of the Freya Familia. It is heavily described, and there's so much emphasis put on how important he is to the Freya Familia. So that is cut in itself. And then we also see how Finn and Lily also realized that Hayden was basically using their original strategy to separate the top dogs and keep them far away from one another. Again, rewatching and rereading the anime and light novel respectively, they really did skip out on a lot of the shock factor and surprise surrounding Hayden's betrayal and how it was impacting the people watching it and also those on the battlefield. This is something I really wish they had focused on a little bit more in this episode, and I think it's probably their main weak spot of this episode is probably the shock factor around Hayden's betrayal. I think if they had put that in, maybe removed the opening or something and put that in, I think it would have been fucking brilliant. It would have been amazing. But unfortunately, it's not there. It's not there. So yeah, it is what it is. It is what it is. It's not something I'm gonna cry about. I don't think it's like, absolutely detrimental. But it would have added so much to Hayden as a character, in my opinion. And I think that kind of, it doesn't weaken him per se, because we still know how strong he is, how important he is. He is one of the executives of the Freya Familia, so we know his importance, right, in the season and in generally in terms of the story with Freya. But it would have also added way more to him in terms of, you know, getting everybody's reactions and stuff like that. I think it would have been amazing. The other thing we missed out on when it comes to the Hostess of Fertility, which is now where we go on to the other side of the coin, where it was the Hostess of Fertility versus the Gulliver brothers, as well as along with, you know, the likes of Aisha and stuff like that, is the Hostess of Fertility only have Chloe, Lenore, and Anya, along with Mia, of course, coming into the fray. Some of the extra waitresses that we see in the light novel, and we don't really see them in the anime at all actually, is like Mai and Roshi. They don't exist even in the anime, so they are cut effectively from the anime as per usual. And then the other thing that we see that was cut, and I say cut in a very weird way, is because it's kind of cut but not really, is basically Astrea and Njord and Demeter coming into the war games. And the reason why I say it's cut from episode 13 is because it was cut from episode 13 and put into episode 12. So it's still there, but it's just switched around. And a lot of the dialogue between Shakti and the three gods and goddesses are removed entirely. So that was actually cut, but them actually coming into the war games and partaking in the war games was actually shown in episode 12 and not in episode 13, which I think is fine. I think that makes sense, to be quite honest, considering the situation as well. The explanation of how they were able to participate and how also, you know, the likes of Chloe, Lenore, and so on and so forth, Ryu, like for example, were able to participate is still there. That is still there. The explanation is still there, because of course a lot of people didn't realize and didn't understand that the gods have to actually be a part of the war games. Like they have to actually have the flower and everything and be hiding in the war games to allow their familiar members to actually partake in the war games. And if they lost their flower or they weren't a part of the war games, they could not participate in the war games either as well. So yeah, I wish we did have the dialogue between Shakti and Astrea and Njord and Demeter as well. That would have been amazing, but that's been cut entirely, unfortunately, because it kind of would have harked back to a lot of the early Astrea record stuff, as well as also getting an idea on some of the Astrea Familia members and stuff like that as well. We also get some more cut dialogue as well from when, you know, Anya is using her magic, such as Chloe saying that the tone deaf apocalypse was coming and stuff like that. But quite literally, I think the rest of the episode is just cut dialogue pretty much for the most part, and it's nothing too crazy. It's maybe like a one line or two lines that are cut from certain moments, and that's about it. Frankly speaking, I will say this: outside of if they decided to remove the opening and ending, we would have probably gotten near identical adaptations. And honestly, the fact that they added more stuff from the light novels, not just volume 18 but other light novels as well, is amazing, and I wish they'd do it more. But I will still say this: episodes 12 and 13 for the most part were great adaptations. Like I said, only minor things missing, and the only major thing I would say that was missing was the shock factor with Hayden's betrayal, with everybody being super surprised and, you know, giving their own reactions and stuff like that. I feel like if that was still there, perfect. Honestly, I wouldn't have any complaints whatsoever. The only real complaint I would have is pretty much episode 13 was lower in animation quality compared to episode 12, but I think it's just a case of, you know, episode 13, you know, was so close to the deadline, and also coming in from episode 12 to 13, there's going to be higher expectations, and seeing the lower quality definitely lowered people's rating of the episode. But still, in terms of the adaptation, loved it. I think it was brilliant. No qualms from my end personally, but let me know in the comment section down below, what did you guys think? Did you guys like the episode? Of course, let me know in the comment section down below, what would you guys have changed. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video, subscribe to the channel for more content, and I will see you guys in the next one. Until then, take it easy everybody. Bye bye.